My name is Christy Busby, and you are about to listen to the next episode of my podcast called F.A.T.E, From Atheism to Enlightenment. So come on in, join me. We're going to talk about it all, from atheism to enlightenment. Alrighty, guys, here we go. Get ready, and welcome to your F.A.T.E. Welcome, everyone, to the next episode of F.A.T.E. How's everybody doing today? On today's show, I am bringing you Phill Webster. He has a book out called Glowing Deeper. It covers everything from witchcraft to tarot cards to shamanism. I'm very excited for him to bring his story, his spiritual journey. Phill Webster, welcome to your F.A.T.E, my friend. How you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Christy. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I read your book and I loved it. I think it was so broad with all the different concepts that you're bringing to people. It's very personally written, and I loved the layout that you have actual meditations in there that can help people get in touch to their spirit guides. We're going to talk all about that, but why don't we begin with your spiritual journey and how you opened up to becoming, to stepping on your path?
Sure. Yeah. So I feel that I wasn't a skeptic, but I always had I always kind of had an eye on esoteric things or spiritual things, for want of a better term. But I was kind of on the fence about it, and it would seem that something happened, which was really the trigger to write the first book, which was Letting Glow. And really, it sent me down this completely different life path, which I've stayed on since. But it would seem that every few years, some weird thing would happen that I couldn't quite put my finger on. And I don't know, I just kind of wouldn't know what to do with it. Just like an odd event, I suppose, like something that would be called spiritual or something like that, or supernatural even. And something would happen and I would think, okay, like what, I don't know what that was. I don't know what to do with that, and then move on. But then around the end of 2020, the start of 2021, so we'd all been through the pandemic, and everybody knows all about that, so I don't need to recap that. But my mum lives on a place called the Isle of Wight, which is a small island at the south of the UK. And I'm based in London. I traveled around for 20 years, been all over the world, and then I came back to the UK 2017. I was based in London, and partly that was because my mum was getting older. She lived on her own on the Isle of Wight, which is a few hours away and a short boat journey away. So I tried to do the right thing through the pandemic, what I thought at the time was the right thing, and kept away, and essentially. And she grew very lonely at that time. She was 76 years old, had various age-related health problems, but I expected her to be around for a few more years. I don't know. But anyway, on this particular day, we would FaceTime every day. I hadn't seen her for a few months at this point, and Christmas had come and gone. I hadn't seen her then. It was like the middle of January. And on this, we were FaceTiming. And on this day, I think I'd spoke to her maybe 2 or 3 times. And this was quite late at night. And just to give it a little bit of a backstory, this island where she lived, it was a very rural place. I kind of knew everyone in her circles. So I knew her day-to-day activities. She was staying at home a lot. We were actually in another lockdown, although I think by that point, people were kind of over it. But for the most part, she really didn't have much contact with anyone. Anyway, so 10 o'clock at night, and we FaceTimed again. And as she answered the call, she picked the phone up and she kind of had the phone charging on the floor, right? Just to sort of talk about it practically. And as she leaned into the call at the bottom of the screen, there was a man leaning in from the other side of the screen. And I saw him long enough that I could describe him. He had like thinning gray hair, glasses, looked like he was maybe in his late 60s, something like that. And, I saw him long enough that I could describe him. And as she kind of pulled the phone up to move away and go sit down, he went out of shot. And I was kind of shocked because this was quite late at night. We were in lockdown. I didn't recognize this guy. And I said, who's that? And she said, who's what? And I said, okay, well, I said, the guy, I just saw someone. And she was like, no, there's no one here, and just kind of dismissed it and started talking about her day. And another thing, I could always tell if there were people around her because she would always put on these airs and graces. She would speak a lot posher, a bit more polite. It was like impossible to get a straight conversation out of her. And she wasn't doing any of that. And I kind of interrupted her and I said, look, Mom, I said, I'm sorry. I said, but I said, I just saw someone, like, who's the guy? And she said, there's no one here, just kind of dismissed me and carried on talking. And I interrupted her a few times, and she just, just wasn't interested. And I truly believe that there was no one with her, but it just threw me off at the time because I'd seen this guy, but I believed that there was no one with her. And we ended up talking for like another 45 minutes or so, and said goodnight to her. And then the next morning woke up to a phone call from a neighbor that she'd had a heart attack and passed away at some point. I don't know if it was through the night or in the morning or when it was, but obviously that was a big shock. And through all the grief and everything, my mind kept going back to this thing, like this guy. And I was like, well, what are we talking here? Are we talking like, and obviously I wasn't there. I can't 100% say that there was absolutely nobody with her because I wasn't with her. But I believe that there was no one physically with her. Like, again, like I say, knowing her daily routines, knowing all the people she knew and all the rest of that. We didn't have any other family there. So I was like, okay, well, what are we talking then? Are we talking spirit guides? Are we talking ghosts? Like, what is this, And of course I would tell people about it. And depending on which side of the fence people are on, some people would be like, well, yeah, that was absolutely a sign that someone was letting you know that your mum's about to pass. And of course, other people were like, well, but who knows? It could have been anyone, or, you're grieving. And that was one thing that would come up a lot. And I would say, well, I wasn't grieving at the time. It was before the fact, But yeah, it just kind of played on my mind. And eventually after a few months, I was working on a film, for about 3 months immediately after she passed. So I just kind of threw myself into this thing. But I had a lot of time on this film set to start sort of reading and researching. And I just kind of went through all the usual spiritual literature, like old school stuff that I read back in the day, like Neil Donald Walsh and things like that. Pretty sort of standard intro, although he does go quite deep. But just this kind of stuff to sort of remind me of things that I've dabbled with before, maybe believed in. And those things helped me get through those first couple of months a lot. But yeah, essentially that event was really the catalyst to everything. Yeah.
I often say a lot on this podcast that I think that sometimes people need to be shaken to awaken to things like this.
That's good. I like
And
that. Yeah.
it rings true so many times when I bring people on and they tell me about their stories. It is always some sort of trauma, some sort of tragic event. My own journey is I had a health crisis that kind of
Mm.
put me on my own spiritual path of investigating all of the mystical experiences that people do have. And number one, I do want to say I'm sorry for the loss of your mother.
Oh, thank you.
Just to put a button on that. I can't imagine, and I'm sorry. Let's get into the book a little bit. I do want to bring up one concept that I had never heard of. I've interviewed quite a few people that have had near-death experiences. I have
Yeah.
never heard of a shared death experience. And I just thought
Yeah.
it was an interesting concept. And I just wanted to ask you to elaborate more about what a shared death experience is. And what can you tell us about those?
So I had a further experience, like within the same day. I went down to my mum's house, and it took all day because there was no transport, there was no public transport. The boats that you had to get to the island with were running very slowly, and it essentially took me like the entire day to get from London to the island, which would normally be just a couple of hours, but it took like a good 10 hours or something ridiculous to sort of just go through this whole sitting on trains and buses and boats and just sort of go, and people were calling, and then authorities were calling, and all this stuff. It was just a horrific day. And I remember getting to the house, and just being really obviously overwhelmed at it, and just kind of in a daze. And I don't really remember much about it, but I went to bed that night in my mum's bed. And I hadn't been allowed to see her or anything like that because of COVID rules and what have you. And yeah, I went to sleep that night, and again, I personally think this qualifies for as a shared death experience. Somebody might not. There's there is a discrepancy between times as well, but that's probably something we're going to get into later. But I went to bed that night and I had the most vivid dream. And I kept waking up and just sort of remembering over and over again that my mum had passed. It's just horrible. You know, whenever you have like an event like that, just waking up is just the worst, you know, and just sort of remembering all over and over again. But I had, at some point, I had this extremely vivid dream, and it wasn't like a dream I'd had before. And I was in a room, and it was this room full of swirling colors. Like literally the walls were moving. And my mum was standing in front of me, and I was talking to her like really logically. And I remember saying, "Oh, you know," she was saying that she wasn't quite sure what happened. And I said, "Oh, they said it was your heart, mum." And I remember her hand going to her chest like this. And she was just asking me, she was like, "What, are you going to be okay?" And I'm like, "I'm going to be absolutely fine," you know? And yeah, like as most mothers do, like she was typically sort of more worried about me than she was herself. And we kind of had this conversation, and then I was like, "Okay, you got to go. You got to do this. You know, this is what it is. You got to go for it." And she stepped away and she kind of went through this door. I mean, this all, you know, it's very sort of symbolic and metaphorical, but she stepped away, and I woke up with a odd mix of relief and again, you know, more tears. But I don't know, can't say for sure, but that to me it felt so profound that I believe that at some level I experienced her transitioning. Now, at the time I didn't, because this wasn't my arena at all, you know. This was only sort of something that came later. But it really stuck with me. That dream very much stuck with me. It felt like saying goodbye to her. Um, so to get back to your original point, sorry, I've taken the very long way around to get to that.
No, not at
The
all.
shared experience. Yeah, well, it's usually when somebody experiences the moment of transition. So people talk about near death experiences where they leave the body and they you know, see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I mean, it does vary, but there are very many consistencies with millions of people's report, probably more than that. And a shared death experience comes up a lot. I think Dr. Raymond Moody, who's the, you know, the sort of expert or the pioneer on all of these, he interviewed so many people on near death experiences, and this kept coming up, that it seemed to be essentially a thing that people had described somebody passing over, described the environment that they were in, first of all, when they weren't with them, when they were somewhere else in the world entirely. And then a similar story to what I just told, but actually passing through with them to wherever they go next and seeing those other dead relatives that people talk about when they have a near death experience, and just being part of that whole thing, and then coming back and telling everyone about it. And, you know, typically people probably think they're nuts, but yeah. So that's what a shared death experience is. And again, I suppose like a lot of these things, when we talk about these things, they're very subjective experiences, and they're up for debate, and people might disagree with me about that. But yeah, that's my interpretation of it.
I do love that more and more people are coming out and talking about things like their near-death experiences, the shared death experiences, their ability to pick up or be in tune to a spirit guide, to their higher selves. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the concepts in the book, like spirit guides, like how people can start to lean in to their own spiritual gifts and using intuition, listening to that inner voice. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to lean into that part of yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll get straight to it because, again, I've got a very long-winded way of telling how I got into this. But essentially, it was spurred by going to a spiritualist church and watching a medium at work. And this is never something that I'd never seen before. And I didn't even know what a spiritualist church was, but they're kind of like 10 a penny around London. They're everywhere. And pretty much every week, a medium will stand up and give a demonstration of mediumship to the audience that are there. And they don't know who's showing up. No money's exchanged, nothing like that. And they'll just pretty much go around the congregation and say, "Okay, I think I've got your father with me," or this and that, and go through the descriptions, and people, you know, either agree or disagree. So that was really the catalyst, another catalyst, I should say, another sort of stepping stone, when I got evidence at this place that I just stumbled into, really not sure what to expect, and still very much on the fence about it, or very skeptical about it, until I really got sort of confirmation after confirmation that this person that was given the demonstration. I'd got my mum and somebody else that I knew also that had passed some years ago. But anyway, so that kind of really opened that door to me. And one of the I suppose the key to unlocking mediumship, or arguably any kind of psychic power, would be to connect with spirit guides. So it's an interesting one because I'm actually writing another book at the moment, and I feel like I'm connecting like very directly and having a direct conversation. But I think the easiest way for us to sort of conceptualize them is that we just have this team of guides around us that are sort of involved with different areas of our lives, that are taking care of work matters or relationship matters or even day-to-day stuff. And that we have a bigger purpose for being here. That when we came here, we came with an agreement and we agreed with these guides and other members of our families, and we reconnect, and we do this over and over again. And we have this team that are here to guide us through life, basically. So going back to mediumship, I found that really the key to unlocking that was to connect with these guides, who are then the sort of intermediary between yourself and maybe the person who's passed on that you're connecting with, as well as other things. So yeah, I feel that for my first experience with connecting with, I've had a few, and I feel like I'm still meeting them. Like new ones pop up, and I think that's the same for all of us. We have new ones coming in and out. I know how nuts this sounds. Believe me, I wouldn't have. But I've heard this conversation 3 years ago, I'd have been like, okay, what the hell is that guy talking about? But
same here.
yeah,
I'm new to the spirituality game myself. Same here. I have been interviewing people and reading books and listening to podcasts, and I am very new to this stuff. So
yeah,
I have only just stepped into this world, and I would have said, this dude's nuts myself just a
yeah,
few years ago. I would
100%.
have. So full
Yeah, me
disclosure.
too. Me too. To an extent, I still do. I don't kind of just buy into everything because it's like woo woo, and then I hear myself talk back on one of these podcasts. I'm like, okay, I sound absolutely nuts. But back to spirit guides, and yeah, I essentially, and to get to connect with spirit guides, I feel that meditation is the key to that. So just to be able to take that time to sit with yourself and start to recognize that we're not our thoughts, that we can step back from our thoughts, and that we are this quiet voice behind it all, behind the clutter. And I know a lot of people struggle with it, and I think everybody struggles with it. We are bombarded with thoughts coming in all day long. We think about this, we think about that, and then you're sort of supposed to try to take this time to just sit with yourself and create this space, and then step away from these thoughts. So for me, the way I've experienced it is that when I was able to begin to do that, and when I was be able to sort of take this seat backwards and just be like, okay, that's going to keep distracting me, but that can just keep going. I'm over here. Then I recognize something new come in, and I know that it's not from me. And oftentimes I know it's not from me because it's something way smarter than I would come up with. So I'm like, okay, that's too clever for me. And that's kind of been the process really, and just sort of taking these little nudges, asking directly, just finding that space, and go through a process, whatever that process may be for you, like opening up chakras and all the rest of that. And then just asking for guidance and see what comes through, and then just quietly take note of it, and you will in time begin to tell the difference. Yeah, that's been my experience.
I am in the same boat. I have been practicing meditation, trying to shut down that mind and focus on my breath. And I've
Mm.
even been recently started working with a pendulum to try
Okay.
and
Yeah.
speak to my higher self, my spirit guides, to get guidance on various things. And I'm very much like you. I am in my own spiritual development. I'm not I'm trying I don't I'm trying not to take it too seriously. At the same time, I'm trying to just let it go where it's meant to go without any expectations or
Mm,
or
mm.
or, you know, precognitive thoughts about how it's going to go. But I am working towards opening myself up to being more intuitive, being more able to rely on spirit guides.
Yeah.
They do say in the spiritual world, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit, is when you think about the concept, we are not our thoughts. I have heard many times that we are not supposed to be using our own mind all the time to figure out every little thing in life, that we are meant to be allowing our higher selves, our spirit guides to kind of guide us in a much
Mm.
more dramatic fashion, and that our mind is really there to interpret data as in temperature and don't burn yourself and the immediate stuff, but as far as
Yeah.
where this life is supposed to take you, that was pre set up in a soul contract before you got here, that is supposed to
Mm.
be coming from your higher self or spirit guides in that world. So it's all
Absolutely.
fascinating.
I think that one little sort of trigger for that is like, or one thing to sort of take note is if you've always had something come up, like let's say that when you were 8 years old, um, somebody wanted you to play the piano or something like that, and you were like, no, I don't want to do that or whatever. And then you got to your teens, and somehow the piano came up again, and but you felt like too intimidated. You got all your friends around you and blah blah blah. And then at some point in your 30s or 40s, somehow it comes up again, and you think, oh, I've always kind of had an eye on that. And you do it, and it opens up this whole new world. Like just as an example, I feel that that's kind of like those kind of points are for whatever reason, some of the reasons that the things that we came here to work on. I don't know why I thought of piano, but yeah, I'd like
It
something that comes up over and over that you might
it's
not be
it
ready to learn. So yeah.
it is we definitely live in a much more complex reality than um what mainstream people are think it is. The more and more and
Oh,
more
definitely. Yeah.
I'm navigating this world of spirituality and talking to people, the more and more I'm blown away by the level of sheer complexity of what our true selves are, and how what our soul purposes are, the dimensions. You know, let's talk about some of that kind of stuff. The concept that we are multi-dimensional beings. We
Mm.
There are various planes that we will live within and on, and we will always, we are eternal. We're beings of light. Why
Mm.
don't we
Mm.
talk a little bit about 3D, 4D, 5D? You hear people out there throw around these concepts a lot. Why don't you explain from your perspective what that is?
Sure. I mean, I kind of, the cynical part of me always hates these terms, and it's again after everything I just said, I can just as easily just like pick at it and think, I don't know about that. Only having experienced these things, then it's like, okay, oh, that's the thing. I know that's the thing because I've had experience after experience through mediumship, through other things that has confirmed to me again and again. But then a little bit of time will go by without it, and I'll start over questioning again. But one thing that kind of almost rattles me are these terms. But what else have we got? We've only got language to describe these things, right? So I think when we talk of 3D, we're just talking about if you're living in a 3D existence, that you're just basically dealing with standard level things that we all deal with. You're concerned about your job, you identify with your job, you are your job, you are your friends. You've kind of established this personality and decided that that's you, and you agree that everybody else agrees that that's you. People have got their opinions, their ideas. You take them on. You're like, oh, that must be me because they said that. That kind of thing. And we've all been there if we're not still there. And then I feel that when you start moving out of that space, people are labeling this 4D. Actually, way smarter people than myself came up with this a long time ago. But that's essentially when you start taking note that, oh, okay, there's something a bit more, like a glimpse behind the veil, seeing somebody on the phone call with your mom before she's about to pass, or having these some event that makes you kind of take notes that thinks, oh, okay, maybe this isn't quite right, or you just got this innate sense of knowing that there's something more to this, that this can't just be as black and white as it appears, because it's definitely not. Even if you start looking at time or something like that, to look at that on its own, that's just its whole own
Mind-boggling.
thing.
Yeah.
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 So and that we only have this moment of now and all the rest of it. And I think that like talking about 4D or living from 4D is really that awakening, that knowing that there's something a bit more, but you're still dealing with 3D, and sort of going on with your day to day life. I think that 5D is when you really move to the point that you're like, oh, okay, I'm not this isn't this is kind of like a bit of a game or something here. You know what I mean? When you kind of come to this realization that you don't necessarily have to do the 9 to 5. You don't have to listen to what that person tells you their opinion of you is, and they're welcome to it. But, you might start dropping people, and
Yep.
thinking, okay, and I just did this recently. I had like somebody that I considered a very dear friend for 20 years. We would speak daily. And as soon as I've kind of gone down this path, he had a problem with it. And I still don't kind of get why. But I was like, well, this doesn't work for me anymore. I can't be dealing with this negativity. I know that there's a bigger picture than this, and I don't want to sound like I feel like I know better than him, but he's just not where I am right now. We've just gone completely different paths.
Do you
And I
think
know that,
that is also due to maybe the fact that you have started vibrating at a different you're resonating with a different vibration, and he's at a lower vibration, and now you kind of can't align anymore? Because that's what that speaks to
yeah,
me a little bit.
yeah, and unfortunately it does. And it sounds kind of so self-serving or a little bit obnoxious and I try to avoid as much as I can sounding like that. But I just know that he doesn't know what I'm talking about, and as one of my best friends, I was continually taking advice from him to the point that I started doubting, and I'm like, well, why am I taking advice from this guy? He hasn't experienced these things. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. He's still, for want of a better expression, living at 3D,
Yeah.
and yeah, and it just we're just not on the same page, and it's heartbreaking, and it still bothers me but just as one example, that's some of the casualties of moving to that point. But you really do feel like you know a deeper truth, and I have to say, when you get to that point, and I'm not by any means rich or making a ton of money or anything like that, or I feel like I'm very much at the start of my journey, but everything shifted. Everything shifted. I was able to drop my 9 to 5 or little bits and pieces that I was doing. I was working as an actor, so I was doing this and that and different jobs. Um, and now I found this. I've been like, okay, this was it all along, and somehow it's kind of turned into my daily life, And yeah,
Our
yeah,
journeys are actually very similar in a way, because when I started stepping on my path and started getting into this, I too have gone through shedding people out of my life a little bit. I think
yeah,
maybe it's normal for when people start vibrating at a different higher frequency, and it isn't, and I agree with you, it's not about being better than anybody. It's about, not everyone is meant to awaken in this lifetime. Not everyone
yeah,
that you come across are going to be open to these concepts. They're not is going to be that is not their path. That's kind of what
mm,
I look at it like. It is not their path to open or to awaken in this lifetime. It's your path. It's my
yeah,
path. And I have gone through a similar evolution of, and don't get me wrong, there's plenty of people in my life still that are not where I'm at spiritually. And I want to have these people in my path, and they align on a lot, maybe not everything. And
mm,
I choose not to speak that much about it with them, and I accept
yeah,
them for who they are, and I accept them for what they are, and not everybody has to be your spiritual guru, and you enjoy them and you move on, but
exactly,
there are
yeah,
definitely people that have fallen away out of my life. And I
mm,
also feel that since I've been here, and I've only been doing this podcast since this year. It's fairly new,
yeah,
but I also feel very aligned with it. And it is like the universe is helping me on my journey. It has
yeah,
become something, it feels like an old coat or something that I'm putting on when I'm doing an interview. Like I was always supposed to be doing this. It is, I
yeah,
do feel that if you open yourself up and you start stepping into an alignment or in a flow, that um the universe will start opening doors for you and start pulling you. I've never, pulling you in a direction that you
mm,
never would have
mm,
thought you would have been pulled in before.
yeah,
So
definitely,
it
definitely.
it's fascinating.
Yep. I mean, my daily life. I mean, and I feel that this is just part of my journey. But I got to a point where I'd wrote these 2 books, and I've been giving meditation classes and talking at workshops and things like that, and obviously doing podcasts and radio and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, I probably need to start putting my money where my mouth is now, and maybe tentatively step into the arena of giving readings. And I'm not necessarily talking about mediumship sometimes mediumship comes through. But at the moment, my daily life is giving people online readings like through my website and things like that, and I'm like, this is nuts. Like, I just did not see this coming, and I'm still like, how this is the weirdest way to make money, like, ever. But for
Well,
some
I
reason, yeah, it's working, and it's kind of, I just feel like this is part of the journey. This is I'm sort of opening up more and practicing. Hopefully, somebody else is getting something beneficial from it, and yeah, things are going in that direction.
it's one of the charming things about your book is that you're very humble about your gifts. It seems to me that you are very much a channel. Like, you literally channel your spirit guides and write whole paragraphs on what
Mm.
your higher self or your spirit guides are telling you to
Yeah.
say in the book. And even though it feels in the book you haven't stepped into the confidence that it's really happening and that it's truly who you're meant to be,
Mm.
I, after reading the book, kind of feel like you are definitely a channel, a medium, somebody who has the ability to tap into the higher realms that most people don't have. Um, let's talk a little bit about your training under shamans and your mediumship training and how you developed your skills. I'm very interested to see how that expanded your ability to tap into your own gifts.
Definitely, yeah. So I very soon after, I'm just kind of like putting a thread through this. So very soon after
Yeah.
walking into that spiritualist church, I read a book by a medium called Claire Broad. She's wrote a couple of books. She's I mean, to me, she's one of the best, or to many people, she's one of the best mediums in the UK. She's booked, she opens up her books for readings, and she's sold out within like 15 minutes for the whole year. So she's great. And I was lucky enough to see that she was giving a workshop at a place called the College of Psychic Studies in London. And when I saw this, I was like, the what? Like what, this College of Psychic Studies? It just sounded, I've got to admit, it sounded kind of ridiculous to me at the time. It sounded like, the X-Men school or something. But, I went along to her workshop, and I told her my story and about a few other things that had happened through my life. And she was the first person that got it, that was like, oh, that's because that's that, and that's because that was your crown chakra, and that happened because of this. And I was like, what, like, really? It's like, I had no idea what about these things, and everything made sense. And she just completely got it, and we stayed in touch. And I'm lucky enough to call her my teacher still. I still sit in a development circle with her, like, once a month at least. But yeah, she was really the first person that I trained with. I met other mediums along the way. Again, this whole thing opened up for me in London, in particularly, and across the UK. There were many mediumship development circles. And I got to admit, at that point, my whole focus was on, I missed my mum. I wanted to know that my mum was all right, and I had it confirmed a couple of times, but I just wanted it. It wasn't enough. I just wanted more. So very quickly, sitting in different development circles, I started giving evidence to people. So somebody would show up, or especially if I would start at a new circle, we didn't know each other, anything about each other. And we went through our process of like opening up, connecting with our guides, all that kind of stuff. And I remember very quickly just giving evidence to people that I just know that I didn't know. There's a lot of no's in there. Sorry. Um, just giving evidence. Like, for example, one of the first things, and it's kind of ridiculous, but I had a lady that I'd never met before. I described her dad who'd passed over, and then I kept getting like an image of like a baby orangutan, right? And I was like, hey, that's just stupid. I'm not going to say that. And I was imagining like a blank screen, and I was asking my guys to come in. I was like, okay, give me something else. I'm not saying baby orangutan. And it just kept coming up. It wouldn't leave. There was like this orangutan in diapers, and and I was like, okay. I was like, baby orangutan, and she was like, yeah. I know, that makes sense. And I was like, how does this make sense? Um, and this was very early days for me, so I would just literally get that and give that, and that's all I got. I got no backstory behind it or anything. So anyway, it turned out her, like I said, her dad had passed over, and her daughter worked in an orangutan sanctuary in California, which to me was just so ridiculously specific. This lady was from, I don't know where she was from, somewhere south of London. I had no connection with her with anything else. And that was just like again, very basic, but very off the wall. And I was like, well, that's just so weird, you know?
Huge
And sort of,
confirmation.
yeah, and sort of experience like that, one after the other, and then, like I say, sort of now on a daily basis, not so much mediumship, but just giving people sort of spiritual readings, for again, for want of a better term, it seems to be working. So yeah, but anyway, so yeah, worked with Claire, did some workshops with Gordon Smith, who's a probably Britain's most popular medium, um, James Van Praagh, and then it kind of led me down this path. I'd been to America a lot back when I was younger. Obviously, I've got to be sort of careful of cultural appropriation, but I did start noticing such a strong connection between mediumship and sort of general, I say general shamanism. Now I'm being completely culturally inappropriate, but there seems to be or wherever you go, if you go to Scandinavia or Russia, or that, or any kind of, I don't know, for want of a better term, medicine people, there was definitely a correlation there absolutely between modern day mediumship and these ancient teachings, as much as I could learn, because obviously a lot of nations are very guarded around their teachings. We're like, absolutely so, and respectfully so. But I did reach out to a couple of people your side of the pond, and yeah, definitely saw just, it's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing with different names, And what I found really amazing was that a lot of these, when you go back to sort of more ancient times, the British Isles, or what became America, or anywhere, we were all talking about the same things. And when we were talking about nature spirits and things like that, even some of the same names we used before we'd even reached each other yet, to talk about spirits and guides and things like that. So yeah, I just found the whole thing really fascinating, and that's pretty much what that second book's about. I just kind of was learning these things and just sort of pouring it into that, and these experiences I was having, and all the rest of it. Yeah.
You talk in your book a little bit about the fact that, we're living in a time where it's pretty dystopian as far as what we're doing to the environment, how we act socially towards each other, the divisions, the wars, the poverty, the addiction, the social media. It's such um a dark almost time that we're going through in the history of this planet. And I find that through my spiritual journey, we 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 kind of lean into science now, and we lean into our technology, and we think that we all have it figured out. And yet the ancient times is really where we were always supposed to be swimming, as far as relying much more heavily on being in touch with our natural nature selves, being in
Mm.
touch with spirit, even, fairies and other beings out there that would used to be, we would call
Mm.
folklore, or something of
Mm.
that nature, or fairy tales. It seems crazy to me still, but
Yeah, me too.
there it does. It seems nuts to me, but the
Mm.
more and more I learn, the more and more I understand that we are in a interdimensional reality, and it really, vibration, frequency, and what you're tuning into, you can literally tune into beings of a different dimension here if you have the ability, if you hone those skills. And there's so much more going on in our reality than what we're able to acknowledge or think about. And I never would have thought that the ancient times are really much more true to our real way of life, and our true nature, than
Mm.
anything
Mm.
in modern day science that is kind of filling us with toxins and and just not,
Mm.
it's why I think it's truly why you see so many people sick now. I mean,
Yeah.
especially in America, our entire population is ill from something, whether it be an autoimmune disease, whether it be
Right.
diabetes, whether
Yeah.
it be everybody's getting Alzheimer's. We're just not a healthy society anymore. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we fill ourselves with everything emotionally, physically, and mentally. That's not how we're supposed to live. We're supposed to be much more in touch with our natural nature selves, with spirit.
Mm. Mm.
And society has been set up in a that's a whole nother podcast. You
Yeah,
know?
no, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And you said about like about us tuning in or sort of developing the skills. I think that we all do have these skills. And one thing that I've said a lot that it's almost become almost like a sort of like my catchphrase or something is that in terms of demystifying the mystical, that I think that we all have these moments of an inner knowing. You walk into a room where someone's had an argument, you say you can cut the air with a knife, or we say
Yeah.
that we can't quite put our finger on something, or we have a gut feeling, and we have all these terms.
Yeah.
And essentially what we're talking about is clairaudience, clairtangence, like all. As soon as you say that, though, like if it's, I think it's just a question of semantics. Like if you reword it differently, we're essentially talking about tuning into your intuition. We're talking about psychic powers. We're talking about picking up on energy.
Yep.
Yeah, just reframe it, and everyone will agree that they have these moments of knowing about something, or turning down a street, and you're like, okay, no, this isn't. I'm not going that way. We all have these moments, but yeah, when you start talking about psychic abilities, people typically look at you like you're nuts. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that we all have these moments, and again, just sort of coming back to meditation or taking that time to just sit quietly with yourself and just be able to go back to that quiet voice. I think that's really the key. So it's getting darker and darker where I am. Can you still see me all right?
I can see you. I can see you. I can tell it's getting darker. I don't know if you have a light you can pop on or not, but
No,
if not,
I mean,
it works.
I probably don't. I could turn this thing around and
Fine.
we might get the light from that way if you want me to.
Oh, I can still see your face. It's fine.
Okay.
One one
Just
one of
sitting in dark.
one of the things that you say in the book that I really like when it comes to listening to your intuition or your spirit guides or your higher self is you say the space between your thoughts, that is where spirit is speaking.
Mm.
And I thought that was a beautiful way for people to try and get an indication of of how they can really start tuning into a voice that is not their own, is to listen between the thoughts. So I loved that.
Oh, thank
Let's
you.
talk, let's talk a little bit about the nature of our reality, our multi-universe. There's multiple us with, the metaphysical nature of our reality. You go into that in the book a little bit, and it's
Mm.
really we're getting into some out there concepts, but let's go there and tell us what you've learned about the multiverse.
It is this will go really out there. So this is like I
It's
feel that
gonna go out there.
spirit guys and talking about fairies like sounds quite like kid stuff. But yeah, this when you start picking away at this, it is crazy. So just to briefly recap, like I had an experience in my mid-30s, which again I didn't attribute to anything spiritual or anything like that. I just went through it. I thought I was losing my mind, and I came out of it. I essentially woke up one morning. I was living a very sort of hedonistic life at the time. I was running bars and clubs, and this was through never really knowing what I wanted to do and never really being happy with conventional jobs. I was living abroad, and I woke up one morning, and I was perfectly clear headed. I wasn't hungover or anything like that, which came with the job that I was doing. But I woke up and I just sort of had this idea about how we've only got the moment of now, and it wasn't like a new idea. I'd obviously sort of thought about it before, like I'm sure many people have, but something switched, and it was as though linear time just fell away, and all of a sudden it was just like now, and it was like time just seemed absurd to me. Like I suddenly it was just now. That was it. It was like everything else was gone. It was just kind of now, now, now. And I suddenly couldn't think about what I was doing yesterday or what I was going to do later that day, and it was overwhelming. Like a pure terror went through me. Like just it sort of sent me into a full blown panic attack. And I was like, okay, well, what the hell's going on? And I thought, well, I'll go walk this off. I don't know what the heck this is. It was just overwhelming. It was as though a spotlight was suddenly shone on me, and I was kind of aware of every thought going through my head. It was just being altered. People talk about being in the moment. It was that like times 1,000. It was insanely overwhelming. And I tried to walk it off. I couldn't walk it off. I went to work that night trying to explain to people it just didn't stop. It was just now, now, now. I just couldn't switch off and just drift off into my thoughts. People were looking at me like I was nuts. Rightly so, somewhat. And this went on. It just didn't stop for weeks. And I eventually went to a doctor. They started using words like psychosis. and which terrified me even further. Gave me some like anti-anxiety meds, sleeping pills. This just didn't touch it. This thing that would just continue. I just felt trapped in this moment, and just linear time just seemed absurd. And I truly thought I was losing my mind. I eventually, just to sort of cut through the story, like a couple of months in, I got to a very dark place where I was like, okay, if this is the way my brain's working now, I'm like out of here. This just doesn't work. And I wasn't thinking of this in any kind of spiritual terms at all. I found a psychiatrist, and what attracted me to him was that he was a hypnotist. And I just went there like, okay, just zap this away, right? I don't want this anymore. And he explained that he couldn't do that. But he did say that he thought I was a mystic. And I just remember thinking, like, the hell's a mystic? Like I just felt almost embarrassed. I was just like, just make this stop. But he gave me a very basic grounding meditation in hindsight that brought me back like almost immediately. And this was after months and months of just thinking I was just going out of my mind. And anyway, I very gradually over the course of a year, I kind of put that behind me. And it took me a very long time to sort of just get my head back and sort of back to what I thought was, being part of the herd or what have you, which is what I wanted. And then I just kind of put it to bed. I was like, well, that was horrible. I don't want to deal with that, And people were saying, well, you should read Eckhart Tolle and all this stuff. I never did. But apparently it was a very similar experience. Anyway, some years later, when looking into shamanism and all the rest of it, I had a couple more. I won't go into another story, but there seems to be again correlation. I'll be sitting in the darkness while we're looking at this. Gonna have to lighten this screen up completely. Yeah, I did. I had a brief experience some years later, and that's what I mean. It would seem that every few years something would happen, and I woke up another morning, and I saw a grid in front of me, like between myself and the ceiling, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And at the same time, I felt like I was getting like this sort of download of information. And this was again before I knew what a download of information was, and this was again one of these other things that since learning about this stuff, all these things kind of fell into place. I was like, well, yeah, that happened, and this happened. So I feel that equipped me to talk about this really, very difficult subject of just talking about how we do only truly have this moment of now. So if we only have this moment of now as we understand it, and of course we can see that, things decay, we get older, we grow, and there does seem to be a beginning and, that we're going on this timeline. But I feel like it's a paradox because we only ever really experience this moment of now. And we get glimpses of it. That experience that I had was beyond, comprehension almost. And it went on so long, but we truly do only have this moment, and it's just now all the time. And smarter people than me have talked about this, like Stephen Hawking's talked about it, and various scientists, and talking about quantum physics, which I'm in no way qualified to go into. But essentially, if we've only got this moment of now, it means that everything that's ever happened is happening right now, and every possibility of everything that could happen is also happening right now. So when people talk about manifesting, and it sort of ties into that, the idea is that we have these multiple lifetimes just going out in every single direction of everything you could possibly think of, like everything. And we just need to pick one and move to that timeline. And that's been quite a buzz thing around sort of spiritual people lately, about, jump into a new timeline, and people talk about it on TikTok and all the rest of it. But there is, there is truth in that. I mean, that's how life works. It sounds really completely way out there. But for example, I could choose now to just stop talking to you, stand up, walk over there, be really rude. And that's the end of our interview, or go running out in the back garden over here or whatever. And that will immediately shift us to a completely different timeline to if we just finished the conversation and we'll go about our business. Or, I could fling the laptop at the wall. There's just everything just shifts us to a new timeline all the time. That's like how we function. We get up, we go to work, we go that way or we go that way. It's insane when you start, for want of a better term, when you start unpicking it, that's literally how life works. And again, higher qualified people than me know how to talk about it a bit better. But yeah, that's it. I feel that we truly do have every possible outcome out there, floating in a sort of state of, I think they call it superposition, that you could just head towards, Yeah.
It is almost impossible to wrap your head around the concept of time when you really start digging into the reality of the
Yeah.
concept of now, and that everything that has ever happened has already happened and it's happening now.
Yeah.
And it's mind-boggling. It's hard to
It
even
is.
wrap your head around.
I'm
But,
sorry. I'm
you
just
know,
laughing at how dark I'm getting on this.
I
Forgive
I
me.
mean,
Yeah.
at the
If
end
you
of
need
the
me to
day,
move.
some people are gonna be listening to this on Apple or Spotify. They
Okay.
won't
Yeah.
know. Some people are
Yeah.
gonna be watching it on YouTube. For all my YouTube, listeners out there, it's all good. We
Apologies.
we
Yeah.
we it's all good. Um, let's talk a little bit about manifestation. You say in your book, that the perception creates reality based on beliefs that breeds potential. Thought propagates intention. Intention builds creation.
Mm.
And I really like to say a lot when I talk about um, giving people the feeling that they are more powerful than what they give themselves credit for, that we have
Yeah.
much more control over our outer reality if we monitor our thoughts, if we monitor our emotions instead of just reacting to an emotion. You can feel an emotion, let it flow through you, and then start to align yourself back to a higher vibration, because that is what your universe will feed you. It is the law
Mm.
of attraction, in essence.
Yeah.
Like attracts like. So why
Mm.
don't you try and tell people, a little bit about the concept of manifestation, and how incredibly impactful it can be on someone who is feeling powerless.
Well, I think it's just again comes back to what we just talked to about before. To put it in its most sort of layperson's terms, literally life works like that. We manifest everything
Yeah.
into reality. You get up and you think about your journey to work. You think, oh, I'm going to get that bus, or I'm going to take that route, and that's you see it all. It plays out in your mind before you go ahead and do it. So you've already manifested that, and then you follow that path towards that way, as in you chose that timeline. Um, One interesting thing that has come to me lately is that I talk about a lot about not your thoughts, but then I talk
Yes.
about sort of following those thoughts to manifest. So I think that thoughts are really a tool to manifest this sort of greater reality, or this sort of core truth that to going very grandiose here. I'm sure it doesn't come down to like choosing a coffee at Starbucks or something like that, but we literally go through the motions of manifesting, whether we do it consciously or unconsciously. You're going to manifest stuff into existence. That's it. That's how it works. If we've only got this moment of now and we go forward from this moment of now, you're going to be manifesting. So why not do it the way that you would prefer? Like, why not turn it around
Yes.
to your favor, and just bring in those things that you desire. Of course,
Yes.
there is that, again, that I, we get things that come in, we listen to other people, we get told that we can't do this or we can't do that. We tell ourselves that we can't do this or can't do that. So there is a bit of clutter to cut through. It's not like, that stuff's going to stop. But again, weeding those people out, weeding those thoughts out, learning to step back from those thoughts and not getting caught up in all of that negative thinking, then it starts to become a clearer path. And then things tend to start to align, like you talked about for yourself, that you start taking these steps and then other things sort of fall into place around it. I think most people have experienced that to some degree, even if it's just going for the job that they wanted, or what have you, or even, I don't know, I was going to say relationship, but that sounds a bit creepy. Let's just go for the relationship one. But you know what I mean? I kind of, when you sort of decide on something that's for you and you're like, okay,
Yes.
well, know that. And I bring relationships into it. It's a weird thing, actually. I'm not talking
Uh,
about really wanting something, but just having that knowing that, oh, okay, that's for me, that there's no way that this isn't a thing, or what have you. Then things tend to fall into place around it. Yeah.
and I have also heard various people say you almost feel as if it's already happened for you. Feel as if
Well,
you
that's it.
already have that. Feel as if it
Yeah.
is already a done deal, and you are literally pulling that energy into your reality, and it has no
Yeah.
other choice than to come to,
Absolutely. And actually
you know?
that most important part. Yeah. That's absolutely the most important key to all of it, is just accept that that's already there. If you accept that it exists out there, after all that we just talked about, that it is out there for you somewhere,
Yes.
just be that. Just go to that and
Yeah.
just pull that to you, and start acting like you're already there. Because if we've only got the moment of now, it is already there. right?
Yes.
It's not 2 years down the line. It's already here because everything is right now. Yeah,
Yes. And, if time's not linear anyways, it really is all, it's all there. I
exactly.
it's still mind-bending concept though, and it's still stuff that
Yeah,
I'm wrapping my head around. And even though I'm been, doing this show for a little bit, and I have talked to everybody all over the world at this point about everything
yeah,
from the nature of our reality to astrology to I even bring people on that believe very much in the Bible and intelligent design. And I talk to people that are very deeply religious and have
yeah.
very religious beliefs. I I I talk to everybody. I listen to all perceptions and
Mm,
modalities. But I will say that your book and the way it's laid out, it hit every single beat for me as true. It's what I've been hearing from other people now. I would say I've been on this journey the last couple of years, and
yeah,
and the same concepts, the same thoughts are they're running, the running thread through everyone. And I
yeah,
am more and more leaning that as crazy as it may seem, as outrageous, as hard to comprehend, as complex as our reality really is, that is the true
mm,
nature of our reality. And I don't believe that we have all of our true history. I don't believe that we know how capable or powerful that we really are. And
mm,
I do feel that there is a a new ascension coming to the humanity that is going to bring a lot of this stuff more into mainstream. And I think more and more people are going to have the realization that we are eternal beings of life that are multidimensional and we live
yeah.
forever and we were here for a sole purpose and we are all connected and that we are all one.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that wraps it up nicely. I don't want to I'm literally going to be sitting. You're just going to be
Where
able to
are
see some
you,
teeth in the
Phil?
direction. Yes. I'm sorry. I picked the worst spot in this place. Yeah.
No, no, it's fine. We are coming up on an hour. I will absolutely start wrapping this up. Where can people pick up this book? Is it mainly on Amazon? Can they go? I'll go ahead and put the link in the show notes and tell them to grab it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, both books, Learning Glow and the sequel, Glow and Deeper, they're available everywhere. If they haven't physically got it in a bookstore, then they'll have it on the website. Like they've got it at Barnes and Noble and all the rest of it, and WH Smith in the UK. But yeah, of course, most people's go-to is Amazon. So yeah, yeah.
And you're in the process of working on book 3 of the trilogy?
I thought it was book 3, but it seems to be turning into something else. So
Oh,
maybe much to the annoyance of Gavin. I think you know Gavin from the
yes,
publishers.
I love him so much.
Um, yeah, I don't think I have book 3 yet because this seems to be bigger than book 3, what I'm writing at the moment. So I need to get back to it. But yeah, I'm in the process of writing the third one, and it's just yes, I don't know what's going on. It's amazing. It's like I don't feel like I'm writing it basically. So yeah, it's an interesting process.
Well, I'll when it's done and out and you wanna promote it, please come back on the show. I loved the book. I thought it was so well written. I loved how you tackled all the different concepts in it, and it's perfect for somebody who is stepping into their own spiritual path. I found it to be super enlightening and very well done. So, I look forward to your next book.
Thank
And
you
is
very
there
much.
a website or something? If people wanna reach out and get a reading from you, do you have something
Yeah,
up that you go ahead and share that if you
yeah, absolutely. So I've got philwebster.com. I think I'm going to revamp the whole thing soon, but it's Phill with 2 L's, Webster. And yeah, I've got links to all of my stuff there. And if anybody does want to get in touch for a reading or sort of step into that arena, yeah, just send me a message and I'll happily get back to it.
Well, on that note, guys, feels pretty dark out there. I think we're gonna call it a wrap.
Yeah. So
Call it a wrap on this episode of Fate. I would like to thank Phill Webster for coming and speaking about his journey today. And I really enjoyed the show. Pick up his book, Glowing Deeper. I will put it in the show notes and reach out to him if you're interested in getting any kind of reading. And other than that, guys, we will see you next week on From Atheism to Enlightenment. Journey well, everyone. Bye. And that is a wrap on Glowing Deeper with Phill Webster. I hope you enjoyed the show. I sure did. Pick up his book. It's a great read. It really is, especially for somebody who's just stepping on their own spiritual path. They want to learn more about it. It is written in such a way that it's completely relatable. All of his stories are based on things that actually happened in his own personal life, from his mother's passing to his experiences when he was a child. I mean, he's just had so many mystical experiences to tell you in his own life that informs the book and his beliefs now, that it's very authentically written, and goes into concepts that you may or may not have heard about in a way that are very easily relatable, understandable, not overwhelming. And there's some amazing meditations in there for connecting to your spirit guides, your animal guides. There's tarot card information in there. I mean, it really just hits all the buttons as far as if you're new to getting into the spirituality concepts. It's a perfect read for you. So I will put his link in the show notes, and go ahead and pick up his book. And when he is done with his latest, I hope he comes on the show and we talk about that one. I think Phill Webster is going to be a force out there in the mediumship land, and he is just now hitting his stride and getting into his path, and I wish him well on it. I wish him nothing but success. So we'll hopefully have him back on the show at some point. You know, even when we stopped recording, he said, "Oh, I just, before we go, I have some stuff coming up for you. You know, I just want to throw it at you." And he's so humble and innocent about the way that he presents himself as a medium, because he still hasn't fully trusted his own capacity to give good information, that it's being downloaded accurately. So he gave me a reading. It resonated with me. I appreciated it. And the other thing I love about both of us is that we're kind of on similar journeys in a way. I would have said 3 years ago that some of the things that I'm starting to believe were nuts, were ridiculous, were fantastical. I would have laughed. In fact, I can remember being in New Orleans back in like 2017, and a woman, there was a street vendor of sorts, giving psychic readings, and I would do psychic readings every now and again for fun. And I can remember that she told me that I was going to become deeply spiritual. And I bursted out laughing, because there is just no world in which I thought that was ever even going to be a remote possibility for somebody like me with that current belief system. But you just never know what life is going to unfold. It's one of the magical things about life. You just don't know where it's going to take you. You evolve, you change, you grow. And I am definitely in that kind of mode right now, where I'm evolving, I'm in changing, I'm growing, and I'm opening myself up more and more to possibilities that I would have shut down with a arrogant laugh and walked the other way. So there is something to be said for having a little humility, being humble, understanding that you might not know everything that you think you know. Everyone these days is so attached to their opinions and their own belief system, that they're not capable of opening the door to anything or anyone else. So I do think it does take a little bit of tragedy. I think you do have to be shaken to awaken a little bit. I think you need to be rocked at your core, whether with Phill it was his mother's death, or me having to go through a health crisis, or someone else who has gone through a death, a divorce, a health, financial. There's all different types of situations that can lead you down a path that you never would have gone to had you not had to go through something awful. So, with that, guys, I'm hoping you're journeying with me, you're keeping your mind open, and you're starting to understand that maybe, just maybe, there is so much more going on out there than we think, and that we are more powerful, and that we should all be opening up to a little bit of new concepts that maybe don't align with our current beliefs. With a little bit of encouragement, maybe go out and investigate. Maybe go out and read a book. Maybe, I don't know, go to a medium, see what they say, see if it resonates with you. I'm encouraging everyone to step down this path. It's only brought me a sense of peace, a sense of fearlessness that I've never had before, and happiness in a way that I've never had before. So I feel calmer and more peaceful and more at peace and more empowered. So if I can allow somebody else to get on their path and feel those things, that's not a bad thing. Anyway, y'all, I'm going to leave it there. I will see you next week on F.A.T.E, from Atheism to Enlightenment. If you're liking what I'm doing here, subscribe, tell a friend, share it, something. I love to touch as many people out there as I can, and I need your help to do it. I can be reached on Instagram at F.A.T.E. podcast. That's all I have right now. I had a momentary lapse of a Facebook page, but Meta shut it down, so I got rid of it. So I have Instagram. You can reach out to me, tell me about the show. I post little clips there. Follow me, please. And with that, I'll see you next week, everybody. Journey well. And welcome to your fate, everyone.